Hello, my name is Nihad Al Sharif. I'm a professional engineer and a senior RTP member. Today, I have the pleasure to talk to you about codes and standards. But before I start, I would like to share my disclaimer with you. Although I'm honored to serve on different technical committees, including but not limited to the ones on the screen, I'm not talking on behalf of any of these organizations. What I'm going to share with you is my own opinion based on my experience and involvement with the electrical industry. My contact information is on the screen. Please feel free to reach out. Let's start. Module 9, Tragic Incidents. In this module, I'm going to share with you a couple of incidents that happened because of a violation of a standard process or the lack of a standard. First, I want to share this interesting comment that I read online. It came from the Congress of the United States Office of Technology Assessment. Standards are essential for all human activity, but most people take them for granted. Only when products fail to work or mishaps occur does the average person think about standards. And I can agree more with this statement. The first story that I would like to share with you today is the Quebec Bridge collapse, which took place on August 29, 1907. Near the end of the workday, on the afternoon of August 29, 1907, the south arm and part of the central section of the bridge collapsed into the St. Lawrence River. The collapse was so powerful that the residents of Quebec City, who were 10 kilometers away from the bridge location, thought it was an earthquake. Of the 68 workers on the bridge that day, 75 were killed and the other 11 were injured. This happened 11 days before opening this bridge to public. Some of the dead were crushed by the twisted steel, they killed by the fall, and others were drowned before the rescue boats could reach them. Sadly, some bodies were never recovered to this day. This is an image of the debris from the Quebec Bridge collapse. It took 2 full years to clear this debris from the St. Lawrence River. The investigation showed that the reason for the collapse was a violation of the standard process. The consulting engineer was based out of Chicago, and he never visited the site. Instead, he relied on the site engineer who was not very experienced, and he missed to report on many of the issues that were reported during the construction process. One of the big outcomes that came after the collapse of this bridge was the institution of the iron ring tradition in Canada, which you can see here in my hand. This is a ring that engineers in Canada wear. You often wear it in your pinky of your dominant hand. So I'm right-handed, wearing the right hand. If you're left-handed, you would be wearing it in your left hand to always remind you when you're signing documents to make sure that you do your due diligence for public safety and for even your own safety as well. This tradition was adapted by some of the US universities. So next time you're traveling or you walk around, you see someone wearing this ring. It could be an engineer from a Canadian graduate from a Canadian university or a US university. The second story that I would like to share with you today is the Great Baltimore Fire that took place on February 7th and 8th, 1904. It's considered historically the third worst conflagration in an American city, only surpassed by the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 and the San Francisco earthquake and fire of 1906. The aftermath of the fire was 140 acres burned, 1,500 buildings were leveled, and a total damage of $125 million. Fortunately, there were no civilian deaths. I was curious to know how much money this would be in 2023 dollars. So using an average inflation of 3.01%, $125 million in 1904 is equivalent to 4.26 trillion US dollars in 2023 money. So what really happened that day? So if we go back to 1904, February 7th, a fire started in the morning around maybe 11 a.m. It was windy and gusting, and this helped with spreading the fire. The Baltimore Fire Department reported to the location of the fire, but a couple hours later, they realized that they won't be able to contain the fire. So they reached out to neighbor cities to ask for help. The first city fire department responded was the Washington, D.C. Fire Department. And they showed up to help, only to realize that their fire hoses, the coupling fire of their fire hoses, didn't fit the fire hydrants in Baltimore. So they tried some MacGyver fixes and were able to get some help in putting off the fire, but the pressure was severely reduced because of the mismatch in the coupling of the fire hydrants. On the second day, it took more than 24 hours. The fire departments were able to contain the fire, and fortunately, there were no civilian deaths, but the aftermath was huge. Beside the aftermath, what really interests me in this story was the cry out that went nationally to standardize fire hydrant couplings. So as of today, if you see any fire hydrant, the one that are on the screen, they all have the same coupling. They can fit no matter where you are in the country. You can just drive up with your fire truck and install your hose in the coupling, not having any concern whatsoever that they may not fit, like what happened back in Baltimore in 1904. Another interesting fact was the inconsistency of railroad tracks in the early 20th century. So back in the day, the width of the tracks were not standardized. So what happened is the train would have to stop and they would have to change wheels at connecting points, which caused major delays moving goods. Fortunately, we don't have this issue in these days, and we are using the standard width so that all the trains can transfer goods from one city to another, or even one country to another, without having to worry about stopping and readjusting the wheels. Before concluding this video, I'll have some key points to share with you. Standardization is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Standards are essential to all our activities. Standardization is unfortunately an afterthought, and only when a product fails or an accident happens, standards take the front seat. Thank you for watching, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.